Welcome to Biz Meds with Darris and Saad, where we give you the medications for your business. This podcast is all about the minimum effective doses you need to make a massive improvement in your business. Listen and enjoy.
Hey guys, back with another podcast of Biz Meds. I got it right this time.
You did?
We are your hosts. Go ahead. Go ahead. Let's get it out. Go ahead.
I mean, because when we first recorded, we went forever without even having a name.
That is true.
It's now we can say, hey, we're Biz Meds.
We're Biz
and
Meds.
I'm Darris.
My name is Saad. And for today's episode, we were thinking about talking. We were talking about discussing being stuck in the struggle cycle.
Absolutely.
And again, staying true to our fashion of what we previously have done. What is the struggle cycle? And we'll start there. What is the struggle cycle?
Okay, so let's just go. I mean, we can back up to like last week's episode. And, we talked about the flow cycle, and that first phase of flow is the struggle phase. Well, that's where, we talked about, that's where it actually is what it feels like. It feels like a struggle. It feels like you're, pushing a boulder up a hill. It feels like you are working really hard, and it's, it feels like a grind.
Right.
And, I think as we were prepping for this episode and we were talking about it, so we talked about the afterburner framework. We started off early on with the cognitive load, talked about afterburner framework, and we introduced the idea of flow. Last episode we really dove into what is flow, some of the benefits and
Hurdles.
The hurdles. Yeah, so the flow triggers, what blocks us from going into flow, how to get into flow. And which is all great. I mean, that's the ideal thing is we're going to go into flow. Mm-hmm. Now, if we're going to address about getting into flow, I think it really is important that people understand that most of the time they are stuck in the struggle phase and they don't even realize it. Mm-hmm. And, if we go back even further in the podcast when we talked about the expectation gap and that whole exponential growth curve where it takes a long time to see the benefit of the work that we're doing because, that growth takes a long time to compound, and we see it takes a long time or longer time for that effort to be realized. Well, what happens when people don't see the fruits of their labor? What happens when people don't see the immediate feedback? What do they typically do?
Discouraged.
They get discouraged and then they ultimately quit.
Yeah. Right.
Or I'm going to do something else. I'm going to go start this marketing campaign. I'm going to, I'm going to go start the Instagram posts every day, or I'm going to go do this. Right. So they run from thing to thing to thing and never stay long enough in the current kind of push.
Going back to the aspect.
That's a really great analogy, right? So that miner there, and he's literally one strike away, but changes direction and goes off the other way. Yeah. So, the struggle phase really is, it happens on two levels. So it happens on that large level of, okay, I'm doing this action. I'm trying to, let's say, grow my business, and I'm going to go do something. So I'm going to start down the road. This is what I think I need to do. And I'm going to commit to this type of activity to grow my business. And I don't see the results I want to see right away. So what do? I quit and I go do something else because obviously that doesn't work. And I don't stay long enough. So I lock myself. So what do? I go from this struggle phase, right? And then I go jump into something new to get into a new struggle phase.
Yeah.
And I never see the benefit of that because guess what? It gets hard. And it's not sexy, and it feels like a complete slog. And then, okay, well, I give up and I go do something else. Yeah. And so I, at a large kind of like macro level, lock yourself into this continual struggle phase. Yeah.
repetitively doing the same thing over and over again in different avenues, never reaping the rewards from any of them.
And expecting a different result. However,
different.
Only because we're deluding ourselves. We think we're doing something different, but we're actually repeating the same cycle over and over and over, which is caught in the doom loop of struggle phase at the macro level. Now that also happens at the micro level. So that's when we're actually trying to get into flow. Yeah. So this is where this also kicks in. I see this a lot, and I say this only because I've experienced it, and it's something as you continually grow, I mean, like getting into flow is really, it's a skill. It's developing a skill. So it's like anything, are you going to be perfect at it? Don't kid yourself. You will not like knock this out of the park every time you do this. What you can do is learn and get better. So struggle phase, it's really hard. I'm working on this thing. I developing something for the business, and I'm trying to get into flow. And 3 minutes in, 5 minutes in, I'm like, I'll just check my phone. Right? And then I'll get right back into it. And I think that, okay, well, I'm still going to be okay. I'm going to be like reading it. But what I don't really know what I'm doing is I've actually just reset myself to the very beginning of struggle phase again. And every time that happens, it's just a complete reset to the very beginning. So you're just getting up. You're not even at your release yet. And you're building up into your release because of that struggle phase. And then, I distract myself and I go right back into, and then I wonder why I can't get into flow really effectively.
So I think a lot of that also goes back to what we initially talked, like somebody trying to implement somebody else's framework or schedule into their lifestyle. And what I'm trying to say with that is, say person A saw results in 3 months. Now person B is trying to do the same thing, expecting the exact same results in 3 months. But the equation could have completely changed. The circumstances of what they were trying to do and in the moment of time could have completely changed. So again, the miner with the pickaxe, their time could have been 3 months and 2 days. And they just weren't willing to wait the 2 days. And they start going, like you said, start going into the loop, starting all over again into something different. I saw this guy do it in 3 weeks. I'll do it in 3 weeks as well. They do 3 weeks, no results. Could have been 3 weeks and 1 day, right? So
that's it. And that's where, why we talk frameworks are important, but also understanding where these frameworks are important, and that there are sometimes there are ideas and frameworks within frameworks. So the idea of the flow cycle itself is a framework and helps us understand how to get into flow very easily. Well, there's things that we do both at a major scale and a minor scale, right? So when we're talking about activities related to maybe growing our business, that we can be stuck in that struggle phase.
Yeah.
And there's also when we're like at the minor scale, getting into a actual flow state where we can lock ourselves into eternal struggle phase. And maybe I'll pick on the minor scale a little bit more. And that really is one of the driving factors is we lead such a distracted lifestyle that most of us don't even realize it. Like how many times we just pick up our phone, you're sitting at your desk, or whatever it is you're doing your work, and something just grabs your attention and suddenly you're reset. And we live in a perpetual state of struggle. And guess what happens from that? Overwhelm goes up, burnout goes up, like stress goes up. And what are some of the major flow blockers? Those right there. Yeah. And wonder why we can't ever get into a flow state. Well, we just keep living this life where we're locked in the struggle phase because we don't actually deal with it. And some of the very simple things that we can do is turn off your phone.
One of the favorite things we'd like to talk about, attention goes down. Fight for your attention. It's yours.
Take it back.
Yeah, exactly.
We laugh and joke about it, but it really is.
It is true.
It is absolutely true.
Especially with the new formats of all of these social medias. Like it's so easy to just swipe through like, all right, I'm bored. And now exactly like you said, in that say 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, you've now reset your mental to start all over again.
Absolutely. And you've just lost 5 or 10 minutes just called doom scrolling,
Yeah.
right? And so then we layer that in, like even with a higher cognitive load, that higher mental load and it becomes emotional. And we feel guilty and, oh, I didn't do what I was supposed to do. And it starts to really weigh on you. And that contributes to that feeling of overwhelm and burnout. And, oh my goodness, I keep trying, and we dilute ourselves a bit to say, oh yeah, I really tried really hard. Well, did you, the harder thing is to turn that phone off or turn that thing off and put it away. And instead we get caught in the doom loop of scrolling forever on stuff that doesn't enrich our life with one bit. It actually just prevents us from doing anything. And then suddenly we're feeling guilty about that. And then on the other side, you hear people and they're saying, oh, you have to live peak performance lifestyle. I'm not going to do the David Goggins again.
I think the audience wants another David Goggins.
Like those are the extremes, right? So we live pulled between the two worlds of, doom scrolling and being distracted more than we even realize that we are, or that we're being pulled or being told by the productivity porn gurus that you have to optimize every second of your waking, and not only when you're awake, but when you're sleep, you have to optimize your sleep too. And so all that does is just ramp up the amount of cognitive load that you have. And as a result, like we then are caught in the forever struggle phase and wonder why we can't ever get out. So when we talked about this was like the perfect follow-up topic to talking about flow. So to help people understand that there is a way through all of that. There is a way to release yourself from the struggle phase, but you also have to first understand that you are probably caught in a struggle phase. So not only are you more distracted than you probably even know, is you're probably locked in a struggle phase you don't even really know, and have convinced yourself that you are doing really hard work. But guess what? You don't ever stick it through long enough to really see the benefit. And I don't say that to call out anybody, and because I want to be like really crystal clear. I mean, this is the sum of like personal experience, right? Yeah. So this is more, I don't really care if anyone listens. Like this is more me speaking to me and holding myself accountable to the times where I know I've let myself do that. And the more that we have this conversation, the more that we call this out and the more that we work on this, right, the less that will have an effect. And because I know I've been guilty in the past of being stuck in a struggle phase forever at the major and the minor scale.
Anybody that says otherwise is a liar. And I'm calling you out on it right now. Well, so we have a lot of like as we've been doing all of these things, we have a lot of examples from that. The one that stands out to me particularly is, remember when we were starting our theme page? Like 3 times a day, posting 3 times a day, every single day for, what was it, like 3 to 6 months, and seeing nothing. And it's so demoralizing. Yeah. But we kept pushing through. Yeah. And what was it, overnight, like just 200 followers. The next night, 150 followers. The next night, it just kind of blew up from there. Mm-hmm. And that was our first perfect example. Well, not first, but one of the many perfect examples of how staying the course and pushing through. The reason why we talk to or related back to the gym a lot as well is because a lot of the examples are broad spectrum. They apply to everybody in every type of business, in every daily life situations. And this happens to a lot of people at the gym as well. They'll start a new program, 3 weeks, they want to see results. Doesn't happen. Then they go buy a new program. Doesn't happen. They buy a new program. They don't stick it long enough. They're not consistent long enough to see the results.
They're not honest with themselves.
Exactly.
Not honest.
And they're liars.
We're going to lose some followers for this. And I will say the same goes for business owners. And I say this for ourselves as business owners, but even the business owners we work and coach. Like one of the biggest hurdles that they have is this like overwhelming feeling of exhaustion, burnout, and stress and things like that, right? And most of the time it's because there's all these things that are just accumulating and weighing them down, and they're locked in that struggle phase, and they don't know how to get out of that. And more importantly, most of them don't even know that they're in it, and don't know that like a lot of their behaviors are contributing more and more to it. So like that becomes an awareness piece of this is what's actually happening, right? So let's talk a little bit about, okay, what can you do? And the simple one of everything, and it's really too simple, but most of us won't do it, is schedule some time, like we talked about in the last episode, to do a flow block, right? To actually leverage that time to do some really meaningful work, but also turn our phone off. And what I have my clients repeat is, if they have a team and they, and they're worried about people getting hold of them, guess what? Unless it's fire, flood, or blood, you don't get to open the door. You get to knock on the door. It's 90 minutes. I have in my career have not ever been in a scenario where like 90 minutes meant
a big
thing, like, or there was anything I can do at that time. If it was a serious incident, guess what? It's already happened. That might sound, and I get there are going to be obviously scenarios where, if you're responding, we're not talking about that. In most cases, as an owner or manager or whatever it is, like the incident's already happened. And in most cases, that's fire, flood, or blood. They're coming to get you. Those are super rare occurrences. You think about when we grew up, we didn't have phones. We had phones that were, attached to the wall with a cord. And some of us had cords on those phones that were 6 feet, so you could actually walk around the kitchen. And if you weren't home, no one could get a hold of you because you were out doing stuff. And we've somehow been tethered now to this piece of technology we carry around. And the easiest thing to do, if you want to get some more presence and some of that cognitive load back, is just take that thing, turn it off, put it away for a while, and do some meaningful work. And you will probably realize very quickly how much of a distracted life that you lead. And so that's the first big thing you can do for yourself, is to schedule that time and actually protect that time and protect the distraction in there. And most people won't do that. Yep. Instead, they will live a life that is perpetually plagued with overwhelm, burnout, stress, all the things, and ultimately cognitive load, and a life of excuses.
Yep.
So yeah, we're getting a little bit serious, but I think that's what it is.
Though that is the reality of this thing, right? The whole point of having these conversations and specifically curating all of the topics is because these are things that a lot of people know about, but they don't want to address them. They don't want to open up the curtain and look behind the mess that they've created and piled up. It was something that I used to neglect before as well. And that's why I say, like, and I was joking, but the reality thing is, like, everybody has gone through this. So if you're lying to yourself saying that, this doesn't affect me, this has never happened to me. If you really, really look back into how your life has progressed, and if you haven't ever been challenged, then, good for you. Like you're living a sweet life. But the average person gets challenged, gets put into this struggle cycle, and doesn't know how to get out of it. So for me, I have a vast network of people that are willing to support me and be there for me. The biggest thing is realizing that, you have to take that step to get out of it. Otherwise, you might just end up staying in that struggle cycle continuously, repetitively. So for me, I've found that, talking it out with somebody else that you can kind of confide in, or have that conversation with, to get another perspective of why you're constantly hitting the same wall. And that's why you need coaches. That's why you need therapy. That's why you need, not everybody does, but it is nice to have somebody that can walk you through the situation you're running into.
I'll say most people need therapy.
Most people do.
Most people,
most
people won't.
Yeah, most people won't do it. Yeah.
That's where, like, someone like Hormozy and I will differ in our opinions, where, I think it's overly simple. It's an oversimplification to say, oh, you just go do. My experience is that we are very complex creatures, And it's not always, it might be simple to say that. It is far less easy to do that because we are such complex creatures. And there's a lot of people that, probably therapy and dealing with some of the things are really good things. And go back to the whole point of that. Actually, the whole point of this is like, this is about awareness. Sometimes you don't even know what you don't know.
Yep.
And until someone kind of shines a light on it and saying, hey, well, here's my experience. And, we are talking from experience. We're not talking about, oh, hey, here's this thing we read about. And, this thing is, this is actually born from a time where, I talked briefly about it, where I literally by 3:00 in the afternoon could not keep my eyes open because I was so overwhelmed, burned out, and stressed and things like that, and could not figure out why, and realizing that this is why, right? So the what I thought I was doing, with the hard work I thought I was doing, right? A lot of times I was creating the scenarios that I was claiming I didn't want, and inadvertently I didn't know that I was doing that, and not until I stumbled on these ideas was that it became more clear, and that's why I think this awareness piece is first and foremost, right? Like, it's some things exist outside of your current knowledge of the world, and once you shine light on that, like, oh, okay, well, that now makes sense. Now that you know, what are you going to do about it? I mean, now that becomes the choice part of, now that you know, what are you going to do? And what we're doing here is, this podcast, for all intents and purposes, how much we want to help people, this is really helping ourselves,
our journey. Yeah.
Our journey. And the more we talk about this, the more we shed light on these things, the more it allows us to hold ourselves accountable to doing the harder work, which is, okay, we talk about this, we believe it, and this is what we do. Yeah. And so when we talk about setting up flow blocks, we absolutely leverage flow blocks, right? Struggle cycle, absolutely. Like, you won't know struggle cycle till you've been through struggle cycle. And I know, like, now that we've been in and gone through lots of different flow sessions, I know, like, the time that my typical struggle cycle will last until I can get into flow, and what really good recovery for me looks like. So that's why we talk about this, is because it's so important that there's so many things that are going on with business owners and people, and they want to do bigger and better things. But in most cases, we are our own worst enemies because we don't know.
Yeah. No, you said that really well. I think that's all I had from my head. You ended it on, well, you said it perfectly, and you kind of summarized everything perfectly.
Can't drop this mic, though.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what you said right there was a banger, and I know bangers. So.
Yes, you do. I think, I wanted, as we talked about this, and the topic was really just well timed for talking about flow cycle, but also here's kind of like the darker side of flow, and that may actually probably a topic for us in the future, is where, like, hey, we talk about flow really positively, but there are actually activities that you can get into flow that are not so positive.
Yeah.
And so, like, those are also things that you got to be careful of. So, like, flow is not always like, oh,
sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah, I mean, it feels great. It's very, like, neurochemically intensive. It's very euphoric. You're like, oh, wow, this is awesome. And, we also say never trust the dopamine. So you don't ever make important decisions while in flow. But your creativity is firing. You're just absolutely in the zone. You get so much done, such productive work. And, if you're aligning it the correct way, you can absolutely condense time frames, because now, like, we've leveraged the afterburner effect, right? We've just taken all that attention, focus, and collapsing time, because we're creating so much more velocity, leveraging flow. And that's why I think we're going to continue to talk about how do things relate to flow, right? Because in terms of minimum effective dose, flow is a huge part of being able to leverage that, right? Like, flow is a leverage activity in and of itself.
And it has minimum effective doses throughout all of the procedures and all of the little things that you need to implement.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So hopefully this podcast was beneficial and you guys learned a few things. Thank you again, my co-host Darris. I think we did a great job. Well,
the reviews aren't in yet.
Well, I will preemptively say that you've done a great job. And
so, I mean, I wouldn't be here with it if it wasn't for you. I mean, honestly, like this podcast doesn't exist unless you're right here with me. So I appreciate it, everything, and
Perfect.
and the journey that goes along with this.
Sweet. Awesome.
Okay, I'm done thanking my mom. I don't think she's actually watched one yet, so called her out.
My mom's still watching. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Mom.
And honestly, for everyone that does tune in and listen and support
growth,
even the kind words that you say to us offline, for all the people that catch Saad in the streets and recognize him, thank you. We just honestly, from our heart, just say thank you for continuing to tune in and listen to us, and we really love having you along the journey.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.